Revenge is often seen as a staple of mankind. Hundreds, if not thousands, of wars have been fought in pursuit of revenge, and millions have died to sate the bloodthirsty egos of rulers since the dawn of civilization. In modern times, revenge is often seen as one of the most iconic tropes that you can find in pretty much every form of media. From the surge of old westerns in the 1960s, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, to more modern stories like Kill Bill and the hugely successful John Wick series, we can come to the immediate conclusion that revenge stories are not going out of style anytime soon. But in gaming, the idea of revenge can feel different. Being in control of a character as they enact their unspeakable acts of violence can be a terrifying feeling and exhilarating in the same breath. The Last of Us 2 is one such game. It's no secret that this game relies on raw brutality to drive it forward. In the first game, Joel is more or less a harbinger of doom to those that he runs into who aren't on his good side, and the characters we play as in this game are no different. Ellie has very much been raised in the shadow of Joel and employs the same levels of violence, if not more sometimes, when she's pushing towards her goals. In my previous video, I had discussed what I considered the most important aspect of the first installment of The Last of Us series, which was hope. Hope was what drove Ellie and Joel's relationship forward and helped them reach that final act before it all fell apart because of Joel's selfishness to let Ellie go to possibly save the world. The Last of Us 2 follows a much darker and honestly much more brutal story that feeds into the most violent human cycles that we discussed a few minutes ago. The endless cycle of revenge and how it can consume you until you're left with nothing but a shell of the person you've become. It's no secret that the pinnacle event in the first few hours of the game is known by pretty much anyone that has been in the gaming space for the past decade. I think it's no secret that the way they drop the mic is both terrifyingly efficient in setting the stakes, but also brain-numbingly strange from a pacing perspective. I mean, killing off your main character in a brutal way seems like a recipe for disaster, but we aren't here to talk about the pacing of the game, but rather to discuss how revenge is portrayed throughout the characters' different perspectives. I will admit they present both sides of the coin in a pretty convincing way that I think a lot of people overlook in favor of hating the story, but before we waste more time, let's dive into what the story actually is and the unofficial start of the cycle. In the first few hours of the game, we are more or less introduced to how much the world has changed since Joel made his decision years prior. Ellie is older now, deep in an anger-fueled state of mind after the events of the first game. The game does a good job of showing how Joel and Ellie have acclimated to life in Jackson, with both of them now in somewhat serious positions of power in the town. We see our usual familiar faces from the last game, such as Tommy and Maria, with some new faces thrown in that will be important in a little bit, such as Dina and Jesse. Within these first few hours is when we are also introduced to Abby and her group as they linger on the edge of Jackson in search of someone whose description feels eerily similar to someone we know quite well. Though much isn't really shown to us at the first segment with them, we can see that their intentions aren't good overall.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure they'll be happy to offer that information up.
Well, then we make them.
From this point onwards, the game leans into the daily routines and jobs Ellie and Joel have been given since they became members of Jackson. Ellie and Dina go off on their own patrol, which is essentially used as a way for the player to get reacclimated with the game's new and improved systems, which also gives us a glance into the relationship forming between the two. While off on a patrol at the same time as Dina and Ellie, Joel and Tommy save Abby from a horde of infected and are brought back to the base of her group a few miles away from Jackson, deep within the forest. As the group realizes their target has come to them, so does the player, and well, shotgun meets kneecap, Tommy is knocked out, and the revelation of how we arrived at this moment starts to become more clear.
Laura, all clear?
He's out. Put him against the wall.
Tommy! Get off me! Get off me! Puta madre.
Joel Miller.
Who are you?
Guess.
In this moment between Joel and Abby, as they stare each other down, there is no sense of fear or loss in Joel's face. He knows that this moment has been coming for a long time, and he is ready for it.
Get this over with.
The next portion of the game is short, but ultimately focuses on Ellie stumbling onto the scene of Abby's revenge. In this moment, we see two things that are relevant to the subject of this video. First is we see the end of Abby's cycle of revenge through the death of Joel. Not only in theory is Abby getting the revenge she's been obsessing over for years, but so are all her friends that have been with her throughout this journey. They all hold the same level of hate towards Joel and honestly kind of relish in his brutal demise, and while we as the player don't know why yet, it will soon become clear through later parts of the story. This is also our first introduction to the brutality that lies throughout your 20-hour playthrough. As someone who played the Last of Us games back to back, I can all but 100% confirm that the violence we are a part of in the second entry is on a whole nother level than the first one. Unwilling to murder her and Tommy after finishing off Joel in brutal fashion, Abby instead leaves them to a lifetime of nightmares in the memory of Joel's head being caved in by a golf club. This is something that follows Ellie throughout the game, and though Tommy doesn't show the signs as clearly as she does of having some form of PTSD from this moment, he is ultimately hell-bent on enacting the same revenge that Ellie desires. And so the cycle of revenge begins for one, and ends for another, and the snakes begin to consume themselves.
Fucking kill you! Fucking kill you!
From this point onwards, Ellie and Tommy are on their own separate paths towards avenging Joel. For these first few hours playing as Ellie, you are more or less following in Tommy's footsteps as he carves his way towards Abby and her group of friends as they return to their normal lives as members of the WLF, the faction that took over after Fedra collapsed in Seattle. Ellie, along with Dina, make their way to a nearby WLF outpost in the hopes that they can catch up to Abby's group before they leave the area entirely. There's a common theme in these first few hours in that we see the relationship Ellie and Dina begin to form, and it will ultimately lead to one of the most important decisions at the end of the game that will further reiterate the point of this video we are covering today. Once they reach the WF outpost, we see our first real glance into the rage that is driving Tommy forward. If we can look back and remember the scene from the first game where Joel tortured those two men while looking for Ellie, now we can see the similarities in how the brothers execute their brutality. This will be a common occurrence as we progress throughout the story. Brutality has made its home in the series and is here to stay, as we will soon find out.
He's one of the ones that killed Joel.
Shit. There's another one over here.
I don't recognize him. He was using them against each other.
How?
Joel told me about this. You ask this guy a question, but you don't make him say it. You make him write it down. And then you ask this guy, and if the facts match, you're telling the truth. If not,
You fuck him up?
yeah.
Shortly after they leave this outpost and begin making their way out of this part of the city, Ellie and Dina are ambushed by the WLF, who are still in the area following Tommy's slaughter at the outpost. This is where we get to see the newer enemy type introduced in this game. Unlike the bandits in the first game, who are more or less attacking with baseball bats and rusted weapons like revolvers and pump-action shotguns, the WLF soldiers you come across are almost always well equipped. M4s, semi-automatic shotguns, and modern pistols, as well as brutal melee weapons such as machetes and axes, are all too common when you're fighting against them. After Ellie gets captured, we are reintroduced to one of the members of Abby's party that Ellie distinctly remembers. He was the one she cut across the cheek with her butterfly knife, and is now seems intent on returning the favor. Another soldier comes in right before he's about to torture her for information, and informs the man, whose name is Jordan, that word has come down from the WLF leader Isaac that she is to be executed along with any other trespassers. Intent on making sure that they can find out who the person is who is killing all their men, which we know is Tommy, he insists she is worth keeping alive for information. Before the men can come to a decision, Dina shoots through the skylight above, killing the other soldier before falling through the roof from Jordan's bullets. This is our first look into the vengeance coursing its way through Ellie's mind. Instead of simply pulling him off of Dina and trying to find out what he knows, the anger takes over, and we are treated to the first of many who will fall throughout the story on both sides of the coin.
Are you okay? Mostly. Ellie. We should go. Somebody would have heard the gunshot.
On Jordan's body, Ellie discovers a note from another member of this group named Leia.
Look at that lady.
Leia is holed up in a news station on the other side of town, and Ellie and Dina must now fight their way through dozens of WLF soldiers as well as infected to get to her next. However, once they arrive at this news station deep within the city, they are again too late. Again, we are only a witness to the brutality that has taken over this game, but this time it is from another faction. Arrows can be seen lodged in the dead, and we are treated to some of the more uncomfortable aspects of this game. Bodies are hanging from the ceiling, and it becomes very clear this is a message from someone besides our usual suspect, which is Tommy. This is our first introduction to a group known as the Seraphites, or Scars as the WLF call them. In simplest terms, this faction functions more so as a cult as opposed to a militaristic entity, and employs the same level of brutality as the WLF as they engage in all-out warfare with them across the city. When they do finally find Leia on the top floor, Ellie and Dina discover she too has fallen to this mysterious faction, but her belongings nearby give them further info on Abby's group and what they look like. Before they can dig deeper, they are surrounded by the WLF and have to escape the news station, further driven deeper into the madness.
Hey, wait. That's near Jackson.
Look at their fucking smiles. That's her. That's the one who killed him.
Soon after the news station, Ellie and Dina are chased by an infected horde, and it is finally revealed that Ellie is immune to the cordyceps virus when her mask breaks during this chase. In this same breath, more or less, Dina reveals that she is pregnant, which brings a certain level of anger to Ellie in realizing that she is pulling someone down with her that has someone to live for at the end of this journey. The pair hole up in an abandoned theater, and Ellie is left to reminisce on the times with Joel after finding a guitar. This is further used to reiterate the sadness that Ellie must feel at Joel's death, but something seems to be lingering just out of sight that throws dirt on the memory. This scene almost directly contradicts how she felt towards Joel in the beginning of the game, and it shows the start of her internalized battle with his death. Before we are allowed to truly take in this moment, Ellie snaps out of it and finds Dina upstairs in the theater. After repurposing a radio, Dina has all but figured out some of the call signs the WLF uses in regards to landmarks around the city. In this scene, we can see the effect this journey has had on her. Her character appears weak, and Ellie finds her as about a morning sickness takes over her weakened body. Further pressing the idea that Ellie is losing herself to this deep-seated revenge in her mind, she becomes infatuated with the radio as the WLF talk of a lone trespasser killing soldiers and evading their capture. This is what Tommy has been up to in the past few hours of the game. Realizing the weight of continuing this trek with Dina, she tells her that she'll go alone to find Tommy in a nearby section of the game called Hillcrest. As Ellie battles her way through dozens of WLF soldiers in search of Tommy throughout Hillcrest, she runs into none other than Jesse. Dina's former boyfriend and baby daddy to the child she's carrying in her stomach. Like how Ellie and Dina have been more or less following in Tommy's footsteps, Jesse has been trailing them over the past few weeks in an attempt to catch up. When asked how Dina is doing, Ellie avoids telling him of her pregnancy, saying that she got sick and is holed up in the theater while she looks for Tommy. To her own dismay, Jesse has come alone. In this moment, though it's not explicitly stated, Ellie must be wondering how many more will get sucked into this black hole that her revenge story has become. Realizing that Tommy is more or less out of their grip for now, lost somewhere deep in the Hillcrest away from where the WLF are currently looking for them, Ellie and Jesse make their way back to Dina in the hopes that they can all come together and come up with a plan.
No warning, no nothing.
Once the pair arrive back at the theater, Jesse attempts to get some rest before the next part of the journey. However, before he can rest, Dina tells Ellie of another of the group that she has found through listening to the radio, Nora. Without any sort of hesitation, Ellie chooses to go after her deep within WLF territory in the medical district. This is where Dina begins to realize how far gone Ellie truly is. Even though Ellie should realistically wait for Jesse to rest up so he can help her, she chooses to go alone for the sole purpose of making sure Nora doesn't slip through her fingers like the others have. Ellie is extremely insistent in this moment, and it truly shows what is ahead for her. Obsessions are starting to take over the logical part of her decision-making process, and the cracks are starting to show as her body and mind are ripped apart by the choices she is making. Through this next section of the game, Ellie must fight her way through the scars before she can reach the hospital where Nora supposedly is. The scars are a different animal entirely, communicating much like native tribes in the Amazon do with whistles of different pitches to signal different meanings. Whereas the WLF functions on the brutality of modern weapons and modern tactics, the scars employ more nefarious and primitive ways to kill you. Bows and arrows in combination with the modern rifles and shotguns is how they prefer to fight as opposed to a more militaristic modern warfare. They are super eerie to fight, and this is shown throughout the game quite brilliantly. Once Ellie makes her way to the hospital, we really do get a good chance to see how brutal she has become. Functioning more like Joel than ever, she doesn't even flinch at the idea of ending someone's life once they have served their purpose to her. This is seen as one of the more iconic scenes in the game, and it does really show us how much Ellie has truly changed since the first game.
We're in the hospital. Yeah, they're clearing out the upper floors. She's somewhere in there. Stop.
After making her way through the hospital, brutally killing everyone between her and Nora in my case, she's finally face to face with one of the people that was an instrument in Joel's demise. Jordan was stabbed from behind, so we can almost come to the conclusion that this is the first time she is face to face with someone who is responsible for the things that ruined her existence. As the two of them talk in the standoff, Nora seems to stress the fact that even if Ellie pulls the trigger, her death will be soon after when the whole hospital goes on alert. WLF soldiers will flood to the sound of the gunshot, and Ellie will follow the same fate as her. To my surprise, Ellie doesn't seem to care. All that matters in this moment is that Nora would be dead with her. While Nora initially seems intent on talking her out of this situation, she soon turns to insults to twist the knife deeper that Joel's death left in Ellie's life.
You'll still be dead. Tell me where she went and I'll think about letting you go.
We could have killed you.
Maybe you should have. Or maybe you should have stayed the fuck out of Jackson. Where's Abby?
You still hear his screams?
What?
I hear them every night. Yeah. Yeah, that little bitch got what he deserved.
You fucking...
When Ellie finally catches up to Nora deep in the bowels of the hospital where the fungus is running rampant, Ellie presses her for the location of Abby. Nora, further realizing that the monster standing in front of her is none other than the immune girl from 5 years ago, reveals that she was a Firefly before Joel wiped out most of their ranks from the face of the earth. Even in the face of death, she is resistant to Ellie's questions, stating that she is dead either way from the spores ripping their way through her lungs. Ellie, very much again following in the footsteps of Joel, states the ultimatum. I can make it quick or I can make it slow. Nora, realizing that this is her only chance to drive Ellie off this path she's stuck on, insists what Joel did was wrong and asks how many have died because of his actions. Ellie doesn't care in this moment, showing no signs of mercy as she asks for Abby's location again and again. Nora doesn't cave, and in this moment, we get the vengeance she has been searching for the past few weeks.
I'm not giving up, my friend.
When we are brought out of the darkness, Ellie is back at the theater with bloody knuckles and shaky fingers to remind her of what she did. Dina, showing concern at Ellie's state, asks if the blood she is covered in is her own or someone else's. Avoiding the question for the most part, Ellie pulls out the map and shows Dina and Jesse the location of where Abby supposedly is. In the end, we are left to wonder what Ellie did to Nora to get the information out of her, and though it's never explicably stated, we as the player can only imagine what happened at this point. This scene, more than anything, is really beginning to show us as the player that the foundations of PTSD are starting to form over what she has done and really what she's seen from Joel's death. She knows that the only thing that matters in her life right now is seeking revenge, but her body and mind are crumbling under the weight of what is about to happen and really what has already happened.
Come on. Let's get you cleaned up.
At this point in the game is where I truly believe we have lost the Ellie that we knew from the first game. Any resemblance of innocence is gone, and we are essentially left with a monster that has one true goal in mind. This part of the game focuses on Ellie and Jesse as they make their way towards the aquarium that Abby and a few others from the group use as a hub. However, once the pair hears whispers of Tommy's locations from the WLF, Jesse leaves Ellie to her madness to save him from the force slowly closing in around him. Again, Ellie chooses her own selfish motives at the moment, stating that Abby is so close that she can't risk her getting away anymore. She knows, as well as our secondary characters, that this has to end before it consumes her entirely.
The best way to help Tommy is to go after Abby. You do this, I'm not saving your ass again.
I really hope you make it.
Once Ellie arrives at the aquarium, instead of Abby, she's instead presented with two more members of the group. These two are Mel and Owen, and they are one of the couples that are a part of the Circle. Choosing to employ the same tactics as Tommy and Joel have shown us throughout the series, she asks the woman to write down Abby's location while keeping her gun trained on Owen. Mel at this moment has no problem giving up Abby, stating that she is more than likely dead anyways, but Owen insists that they are dead even if they give Ellie the answer she is looking for. As soon as Ellie takes her gun off of Owen, he lunges forward, trying to wrestle the gun from Ellie's hands. This leads to him getting shot in the stomach, and Ellie and Mel fighting over Ellie's knife.
Point to where she is.
Fucking point!
In this moment, as Ellie drives the knife through Mel's neck, we see that the violence of Abby's actions have come full circle. These people may have been associated with the act of killing Joel and may have been there when it happened, but now they are both dead at the hands of someone they spared in the hope that Abby's cycle of revenge would end. With Owen's dying words, Ellie's mind is finally broken. As the walls of Ellie's mind shatter, and the weight of what she's done bears down on her, none other than Jesse and Tommy arrive to see the masterpiece of her revenge. Tommy tries to calm Ellie down, his eyes trailing to the pair of dead bleeding out on the floor. As the cutscene ends and we watch the blood pool towards Ellie's map on the ground, we all know that the cycle that was supposed to end at this very location has just started again. The snake continues to consume the other snake, and so the cycle continues. From this point on, towards the end of the story, we are in control of Abby for the majority of the game. Our first introduction to her backstory is through a cutscene with a very familiar person from the first game, and this is where we are really able to connect the dots as to why Abby and her friend group did what they did, and honestly why they went through so much trouble just to do the act of killing Joel. Abby is the daughter of a Firefly doctor that was supposed to perform surgery on Ellie to formulate a cure that was then unceremoniously cut down by Joel before he could accomplish this goal. This flashback immediately cuts to Joel's face seconds before Abby finishes him off, and by extension, finishing her goal of revenge on the man that killed her father. This is perhaps the most important scene in all of this video. This shows that while Abby was doing what she felt was right, she has inadvertently created a twisted version of herself willing to go just as far as she did to reach her goal of avenging her father. Now, in the interest of not wasting 20 minutes of your life talking about Abby's side of the story, we are instead going to dig into what her life looked like in the weeks after she completed her revenge, but in a much quicker fashion. In those first few hours as Abby, we are more or less introduced to all the members of her group, as well as the entity they are a part of, the WLF. This section of the game feels very different than Ellie's in my opinion. We come to the realization while playing as Abby that they are more or less just soldiers that fall under the same rules and ideals as a modern military. We are also introduced to the WLF's way of surviving, and you can really honestly come to the conclusion that, like Jackson, they are simply trying to survive in this messed up norm that the world now bows to. In these first few hours is when we are truly introduced to the war that the WLF and the Scars have been fighting for the past few months. We are shown more than anything the cost of war and how they plan on ending it once and for all through the enigmatic leader of the WLF named Isaac, who is shown to be a twisted man willing to torture other uninfected humans just to get what he wants out of them. Abby and Manny are tasked with finding Owen, who Isaac insists has deserted, and to bring him back so he will be ready for their assault on the Scars' home base just off the coast that will be occurring in a few days when a storm can cover their approach.
If Owen's out there, how the hell are you going to find him?
I know where he'll go.
This leads into another flashback with Abby and Owen that shows the relationship they once had before her obsessions with Joel took over. Owen was clearly in love with this girl, going as far as to find this place, the aquarium, where they could be together after the Fireflies fell apart, yet just like Ellie, she is unable to let it go. This scene is the start of her revenge cycle, and when she and Owen abandon their romantic interests and when nothing mattered to her but avenging her father. This is when, like Ellie, the choice was made to pursue revenge as opposed to choosing the path of hope. Throughout the next few hours, she decides that she's going to defy Isaac's orders and find Owen, but not for the purpose of turning him in, rather to reconvene and kind of figure out what's going on and how he ended up in the situation he's in. She seems relatively done with the WF now that it has served her purpose, and she is more or less sees them for the monsters that they are and how they are pretty much sending humanity back to its primal roots. This leads to her befriending a pair of rogue Scars, Yara and Lev, that help her escape her execution as well as a horde of infected after she is captured by some Seraphites. This shows a side of Abby that the WLF would condemn, yet she treats these two as equals and helps them get somewhere safe until the sun rises the following morning. When she reconvenes with Owen, she comes to the realization that he too is done with the endless violence the WLF is so keen to deploy. He wants something else for his life now and wants to escape to California as he has heard whispers of a Firefly outpost in Santa Barbara. Initially opposed to this idea, Abby insists that if the Fireflies are south, that he should head the opposite direction, given that the Fireflies usually mean trouble more than anything. Owen is persistent, perhaps feeling like his life is finally in his own control now, as opposed to chasing Abby's madness. This can be seen as the cost of Abby's cycle, where her friends now feel as if they have no purpose of their own. The pair then embrace each other as former lovers do, and well, we all know what happens. To skip forward a bit past things that aren't relevant to the topic of this video, let's cover things quickly that have nothing to do with our revenge arc but still happen in the story. Abby brings Yara and Lev to the aquarium. Mel says she needs medical supplies to help Yara with her compartmentalization syndrome, which I'm sure I just butchered. Abby goes and meets up with Nora at the medical district to get some. She almost gets captured by the WLF, which are looking for him looking for her because she thinks she also deserted. I know, tricky. Is almost killed by a giant flesh blob of an infective down in the depths of the hospital. Brings the supplies back to the aquarium, gets Yara help, and then here we are. That's a lot, I know, but most of it, though, really till now does not matter. The next part of the game focuses on Abby and Yara as they attempt to follow Lev to the Scar home base, where Lev has gone to reconcile with his mother. I know, this is where the story kind of gets off track a bit, and I think this is probably where people mostly hated the story. But it's fine, we're still going to continue. While searching for a boat to reach the island, we are reintroduced to the idea of revenge and how it's driving someone forward that we haven't heard from in a bit. Tommy. Abby meets up with Manny and the pair try their best to fight their way past the man we know as a terrifyingly good marksman, and well, we all know what happens. While trying to break their way through a door, Manny takes the money shot, forcing Abby to hide from Tommy in a short game of cat and mouse. When the two finally meet face to face, Tommy looks like he has the upper hand, just for Yara to save Abby last second as all else seems lost. Tommy falls into the ocean below, and Abby and Yara are allowed to continue on their journey to find Lev on the Scar's home island, which at this point is about to be invaded by the WLF, led by the insane antics of Isaac. As we can kind of get to the distinction, Ellie's story is very clear with the revenge, and Abby's story is kind of jumping all over the place. Is this problematic? No. But it kind of isn't relevant to our information, so I'm only going to cover the basis of the island invade and nothing else in the next part. Now, this entire section of the game is more or less a way for the developer to show, at least in my opinion, the lengths people are willing to go to kill those that oppose them or cause them harm. As we sneak our way through the island and witness the atrocities of both sides of the conflict, the first thought that comes to mind is why. Both sides have the means to live on their own away from each other, yet Isaac is unable to accept the world that exists outside his own safety. Once you find Lev, your only goal is to escape the island. As the three of them are making their way through the ruins of an old city, they run into none other than Isaac himself, which sets us up with an interesting clash between him and someone he considered one of his best soldiers. Yara is shot in the process, and Abby stands between Isaac and Lev, further proving our point earlier that she no longer believes the world he is intent on creating is right. In a last act of defiance, Yara wounds Isaac, which allows Abby and Lev to escape. After the pair escapes the island, Abby brings Lev back to the aquarium with the hopes that this can all be swept under the rug and life can continue. To her dismay, she is instead greeted by the scene of Ellie's masterpiece and the bodies of her friends she had seen hours before alive and well. This is where we are finally back to the idea of this video, and thank God for it. Abby's story is interesting enough, and honestly I really grew to like her, but as far as the topic of this video, most of her story doesn't really pertain to it. She is the start, and she ends up being the end, but the middle parts don't really pertain to the idea of revenge, I should say. In this moment, as Abby stares at the people she wanted to start her life with, we are reminded about the same scene but from Ellie's perspective. Ellie knew that Joel and her would eventually come back together and be some resemblance of normal, but Abby robbed that from her in an instant. Now we are seeing the inverse of that very same decision. We are now inching closer to the final confrontation, and more than that, the snakes consuming each other so much that no one wins in the end. As Lev hands her the map leading towards the theater, we all know what is coming. After Abby and Lev sneak their way into the theater, we are treated to the pinnacle moment in this game, where those seeking revenge against Abby don't need to look any further than the place they consider home at this moment, which is the theater. In this initial moment between Tommy and Abby, it is almost immediately obvious that Tommy knows a voice directing him to keep his hands up. As a player, and honestly as a human being, we can only assume that this is the same voice that has haunted him for weeks. The voice that really, just as with Ellie, ripped his world to pieces. Ever the prideful man, or perhaps in an attempt to get any sort of footing on the situation before it goes from bad to worse, Tommy mocks Abby, calling her out for not even looking him in the face before she shoots him. Hearing the scuffle on the other side of the doors, Jesse and Ellie run in an attempt to see what's going on. Before Jesse even realizes what happened, a bullet tears through his face and he drops dead to the ground.
Get out of here!
Stand up! Now!
Don't you fucking dare!
Shut the fuck up! All right? Stop! Stop!
Now entirely on the defensive, Ellie tries to reason with the source of her madness by putting her hands up and telling Abby that she knows why she killed Joel, and that she is the reason all of this happened in the first place. Abby, shocked at the revelation that Ellie all of a sudden thinks nothing is wrong, tells her that the only reason she is here to begin with is that all her friends are dead because of Tommy and Ellie. We can see a similar type of rage in her face that we saw in the beginning of the game as she was killing Joel. This isn't killing to survive, this is killing to get even. As Abby decides what to do with Ellie and Tommy, Tommy makes a decision for them, trying to take the gun away from Abby. In an instant, Lev shoots an arrow in Tommy's knee, and we are treated to another death that is not needed, Tommy's. The next section of the game is an interesting cat and mouse that has players playing the role of Abby as they try to catch the ever-elusive Ellie. Once you finally get your hands on her, the rage of the past couple hours shows itself as you beat her face to a pulp. Just when it looks like it's about to be over for good, Dina attempts to get Abby off of Ellie. As Dina slashes at Abby with a knife, again Lev saves Abby, this time with an arrow to Dina's shoulder. Once Abby is on top of Dina, we are treated to what is, in my opinion, one of the most brutal scenes in this entire game. As with this entire section, the brutality of the game makes its grand entrance and Abby faces Dina to Ellie so she can watch her lover die a horrible death. Even after Ellie reveals that Dina is pregnant, Abby simply continues with her execution until the most unlikely of voices stops her. Lev. Now Lev in this story is very much like how Ellie was to Joel in the first game. It's the innocence to balance the brutality of the world around them, and Abby knows what happens if she goes down this road again. She has lost enough, and in this moment she makes the decision to let it go, telling Ellie that she better not see her ever again.
Don't ever let me see you again.
In these seconds, as Ellie stares at Dina lying in a pool of blood, with the bodies of Tommy and Jesse lying dead in the other room, the cycle ends. The snakes have consumed each other, and the world is the same way it always was. Brutality reigns, and everything else is silent. This is where the narrative turns on its head. We are treated to Ellie and Dina living the life they always wanted on a homestead away from the world with Jesse's son as the anchor to keep them sane.
Come on, little dude.
This scene plays with the very real idea of PTSD and how something as simple as two tools falling against each other can pull you back into a moment without any mercy. As she chases the sheep out towards the barn's entrance, we as the player realize the prison that she has been locked in since Joel's death. She is pulled back to the moment where she couldn't save the one she cared for the most, and we, just as Ellie, are brought back to that same moment where everything changed.
Ellie? Hey, Ellie. Look at me.
As Dina comforts Ellie, we realize the true cost of revenge. The whole basis of this video is that revenge is an endless cycle that has no end for those that take part. Ellie lost everything when she could have just stopped at any point, and honestly Abby was following the same idea, and in the end she also lost everything. This further builds off what I've pointed out in the whole video, that some things never end like you want them to, no matter how hard you try to force them in your favor. In the end, Ellie lost the most, and now she has to claw her way back to her normal existence, even if that means grappling with the demons of her past. While the game looks like it has plans to end on a somewhat peaceful note, we are shown that not only did Tommy survive a shot to the head, but he has also been sucked deeper into the cycle of revenge. He scolds Ellie at her resistance to tracking down Lev and Abby, mocking her quote-unquote perfect life out here in the middle of nowhere with no problems. Though we, as the player, were led to believe that he had died that day with Jesse, his reintroduction here does more damage to Ellie than any PTSD could ever manage. Later that night, Ellie makes a decision that destroys everything she's built since that night at the theater. Choosing to pursue Abby over the family she has established shows that above all else, Ellie has lost her own wants just like Tommy has. Unable to let go of what Abby did to her all those months or even years ago at this point, she puts on Joel's jacket and seals her fate to one that will never end on a happy note. Dina, in this moment, as Ellie is presented with the thought of leaving her forever, tells her that she's not willing to do this again. Ellie, forever locked in the idea that revenge is all that's left for her, says the decision is up to her.
It's up to you.
At this point, we are given control of Abby for about 30 minutes of gameplay. Her and Lev have just found the remnants of a group of fireflies and are on their way to meeting another when they are suddenly and brutally abducted by a group called the Rattlers, who take them to an encampment somewhere around the Santa Barbara area. Though their luck is quite bad, and honestly this whole entire section was probably meant to lure in people like her, we can see more than anything that Abby took Owen's idea to heart to give herself a new purpose, while Ellie is left to her own devices, and by extension, her internal demons. Within the first few hours of arriving in Santa Barbara, Ellie is captured by the same group that abducted Abby and Lev weeks before. This scene shows that Ellie has a general disregard for her own life, using the infected to help her take out the same pair of rattlers that abducted Abby and Lev. This scene with Ellie very much reminds me of how she was in the first game. Just like how she mocked David after breaking his finger, she mocks the Rattler after he gets scared of almost walking into a clicker hanging in the snag opposite of hers. Using his own pride against him, she pulls him into the clicker, getting herself bit in the process before shooting the man in the leg. Again, the brutal nature of Ellie is shown on full display here, as she presses the last man for any information about where Abby was taken. The man almost instantly recognizes who Ellie is looking for, all but confirming that Abby is either alive and waiting for her, or dead at the hands of the Rattlers. The man describes her and Lev to a T, a blonde with big arms and a scrawny kid with cuts along his mouth, the staple of the Scars. Ellie knows at this moment that the man has given her exactly what she asked for. He then sweetens the deal even more, telling her the group's exact location and the exact means to get there from where they're standing. When Ellie turns to leave the man to a slow, painful death, she realizes that she's making the same mistake Abby made months before. She puts a single bullet in the man's chest and makes her way towards what she knows is the end.
We keep him in the tall, round building. I swear.
After Ellie carves her way through the Rattlers with brutal efficiency, and in theory really wipes them off the face of Santa Barbara by releasing all their prisoners and arming them, she makes her way down to the beach where Abby awaits her. This scene more than anything further reiterates the point that we discussed a few minutes ago. Abby looks down at Ellie, really not paying much attention to why she's here to save her, but almost in like a kind of relieved sort of way. This isn't really what many of us would expect in this scene. I mean, Ellie was the reason that Abby went on this giant journey of death, and now she's staring down at the same person who kind of did the same thing to her. The scene is honestly kind of confusing because if Ellie really wanted her dead, she could have just nicked her toes with the knife a few times, and honestly, she would have bled out or died to the elements a few days later, and it would have been a super long and agonizing death. Yet, as soon as Abby is released, instead of going up to Ellie in a confrontational manner, the first thing she does is cuts down Lev, freeing the boy, and then she tells Ellie that there are boats on the shoreline that they can use to escape.
Abby. I got you. I got you. They're both this way.
As soon as they reach the boat and Abby sets Lev inside of it, Ellie attacks her. What follows isn't the fight you'd expect for a climactic battle. Both of them are very much drained of all the energy you would need to sustain a fight like this for more than a few seconds, yet they both continue the farce with brutal efficiency. On one side you have Ellie, fighting to get rid of the past that haunts her every day, and on Abby's side you have her fighting for the idea of a new life that might exist on the other side of this day. Something that she has always wanted from the moment she killed Joel. One free of the rage and hate that drove them both to this point, and also free of this idea that you're always going to be hunted and looking over your shoulder the rest of your life. In these final moments, as Ellie presses Abby's head under the water, she can feel the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. This is it. The thing she wanted since the beginning of the game. This final act to heal the deepest wound of all. This is the culmination of everything we have discussed today. All she has to do is take Abby's life, and everything will go back to normal. The cycle will end, and she will finally have some resemblance of peace. This is it, right? Just a few more seconds, and everyone she has lost will come back. Yet, in this moment, as the music slows to a crawl and Ellie closes her eyes, she sees Joel that night after the dance in the back of her mind. As the pair of them make eye contact for what we assume is the last time, we reach the end of the subject of this video, the cycle of revenge. The idea of double Ouroboros, two snakes endlessly consuming each other in a battle to save themselves. In this story, we have covered what it means to seek revenge and what happens when you reach that goal. In the end, Ellie lost everything. She lost Joel, Jesse, Tommy, Dina, and everyone else that we were introduced to in the beginning of the game. In her rage, she stole the very thing that she wanted to save her for herself from Abby. In chasing the idea of revenge, Ellie now realizes the cost of what she's done. She could have ended it at any moment, but she didn't. She continued to do the things that made herself feel good, even if it meant ripping out her own soul in the process. Abby was very much cut from the same cloth, but while she was able to carve out a new life for herself away from the draw of revenge, Ellie was not so fortunate. When she arrives home weeks later, Dina is gone, no longer willing to wait for Ellie to satisfy her needs for vengeance. As soon as she goes to play the guitar, she realizes not only has this journey left her with no one, or really anything to look forward to, but it also has taken the one thing that reminded her of Joel the most. In this scene, I can only hope those of us that enjoyed the game like myself feel a sense of sadness at what has become of Ellie in these last few hours. She had the life she always wanted with Dina, and threw it away in pursuit of something hollow and made of ash, and was never meant to do anything but cause more pain. The worst part of all is, the most tear-inducing scene of all is creeping up on us at this very moment, and it will make the subject of this video even harder to process.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
Yeah. I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I like that.
Okay. I'll see you around.
Yep.
As we inch our way towards the last few minutes of the game, we are presented with the most heartbreaking scene of all, and perhaps what I believe to be the ultimate motivation for why Ellie did what she did. We see Joel and Ellie talking the night after the dance, very much continuing the flashback she had weeks before while choking the last bit of life out of Abby. This shows us that as Joel stole her choice in regards to living or dying that night in the hospital, to be the one that people looked up to be the savior of the world, Abby stole her chance to make up with Joel by killing him before they could make up. Seeing that she has ruined the best parts of her life in chasing the endless draw of revenge, she leaves the guitar in the same house where Dina and her had lived the life she deserved. The place where she had made the decision to attempt to free herself of the pains of the past, only to realize that Joel would have never have wanted this for her in the first place. He would have wanted her to be happy, to be free of the shackles of grief. Living with the survivor's guilt from the first game, paired with a new want to mend the relationship with Joel that ended too soon, and all we as a player are left with is a perpetual state of sadness that has now become Ellie's life. In the end, as the camera pans to Ellie walking away from the house, we can all hope that Ellie will someday find peace that she so greatly deserves. If we are going to get that closure, it's not up to me, but I hope we do eventually get it one day, either in Last of Us Part 3 or in a TV show. And there we have it, my longest video essay to date. I hope y'all enjoyed this. If you did, like, comment, and subscribe and tell me what you think. And as always, I hope y'all have a good rest of your night.